Are doing a co-presentation. Because of that, I'm going to hand you guys the physical large microphone so you can pass it between each other very easily. Thank you both, and I think we're about ready to start the talk, so stop your side conversations.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Oh. This thing? Oh. Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Aditi. This is Steve. Fun fact, we're actually meeting in person today. We've never met, and this work has been going on for a year. So it's really exciting to share what we've been working on. So just some contextual background information. I'm a physician in family medicine, and I have an interest in genetics. So this story kind of starts off in 2016 when I went to India to study rare genetic diseases. And Alia, pictured here, she's 2 years old. She's not a result of bad parenting. She is morbidly obese because she has a rare genetic condition. And the thing with rare genetic conditions are they are disproportionately, there's not a lot of medical knowledge that goes on because doctors are trained, we're trained to study more common conditions. Um, Additionally, pharmaceutical incentives because pharmaceuticals want to make money for most people. The amount of research and funding that goes into rare disease treatments is very limited. And lastly, and I think the most important thing, is the burden and isolation that comes with a rare disease diagnosis. So that's kind of my mission as a physician is not just to build connection in the clinic, but outside to sort of bridge the gap between rare communities and the common public. And so you might be wondering, how, if I don't have a rare genetic disease, why should I care? So in 2019, there was a landmark study done that analyzed the economic burden of rare diseases on the US economy, and it came out the estimated burden was about $997 billion. That's per year. And they only used around 335 rare genetic diseases. And for context, there's over 7,000. So that's just a very, very small sample of kind of what we're looking at. So I think it affects, hopefully, the study kind of remarks the importance that it affects all of us, even if we are not diagnosed with a rare condition. And so I like to do a lot of writing and music, and I came across Stephen's work by, I think I do a lot of searches for music and genetics, and so my YouTube algorithm kind of passed on a video of Stephen's work, and I reached out to him and I said, hey, can we create something that kind of encompasses rare genetic music? And so we took in this study, the way that the study was divided up, there were different rare disease groups. So, like diseases of the digestive system, diseases of the skin, and we kind of transposed this. I don't know if you're familiar, the Indian musical system, they have a Carnatic music system, and there's 12 different ragas, which kind of form the base rhythm to each of the, like one of their subsystems. And you can essentially kind of translate the words in Sanskrit to bodily systems. And so, for example, Netra means eye. And so we used that raga for all the eye diseases. And I'm going to pass it on to Stephen, and Stephen makes the magic happen. So here you go.
So this turned out to be kind of an exercise in turning spreadsheets into music. And so I thought I would start off, if I can figure out how to get out of this. There we go. So this is the spreadsheet that Aditi sent me. Oh, I have to eat the microphone. This is the spreadsheet that Aditi sent me. It has 230 diseases with their promoter sequences. And so Aditi's idea was to use the promoter sequences as a kind of calling card for each disease. I thought I would start off by showing you something simpler. This is just a chain of amino acids. It's one of the proteins from the coronavirus, and I got interested in this a couple years ago. So I thought I would play one of these for you. Except I have lost entertainingly. Oh, great. Hold on. Sorry, folks. Oh, here it is. Nope, it's not. Curses. This will do it. All right, so if you just take one of those very simple spreadsheets, it's a one-dimensional thing, basically, with one extra column marking secondary structure, if you know what that is. And so here's what one of those sounds like. And of course, you can map them all sorts of ways. Here's another mapping. Where the basic idea is that if it's a hydrophilic amino acid, it likes water, and so I gave that a higher register. If it's hydrophobic, it doesn't like water, and I give that a lower register. And then the secondary structure, the beta sheets have a little gyro sound, and the alpha helices have a triangle sound. And when the chain turns to fold into its three-dimensional structure, it changes key, basically. So that's that. One problem that you quickly encounter with this stuff is the problem of scale. In other words, a lot of these things are very long. One of my favorite examples for this was a sonification I did several years ago of Trump's lies. Okay, so the problem is this was only the first 6 months, and of course there's way more. So I haven't figured out how to solve that problem of scale yet. But I came across a similar problem of scale with Aditi's spreadsheet, because we've got 230 of these things. And so the first thing I did was I wrote a max patch. Is anybody a maxer here? Great. This is a nifty thing that just takes the spreadsheet and separates it out into these different fields. And so if I scroll through it, it's just going through these things. And this is how I ended up making the piece. There's way too many letters of DNA to go through all of them. And so I had the idea to take how many letters you hear are determined by how many genes are present in this disease. And so in this particular disease, there's 9 genes involved, so you hear 9 letters. In the next one, there's only 1. And so this lets you get through the data a lot faster, and it also kind of gives you some variety, and that can be very helpful. But 230 is still a lot to get through. So what we ended up doing was making it pretty strict sonification scheme, but then we decided to interpret it as data-driven music by adding basically just on top of it a freely composed electronic viola part. And so let me find that. Okay, so I'm just going to play this for you. Seven and a half minutes. This is the first chakra that Aditi was talking about. Vritu. What does Vritu mean?
I have to look it up. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing, but I'll maybe get back to it.
Endocrine system. Then we just transfer it into the next chakra, and so you hear the kind of background harmony change. So that's it. I've got a bunch of stuff I could say about how hard it is to do this kind of stuff. But maybe if anyone has questions first, that's fine. Maybe we can steal this one. Check.
1, 2.
Check. Oh, there is a second.
Hi. You mentioned the trouble you had with how long these sequences are, and that you just chose like a couple, or in the case of a lot of genes, many. Did you consider other things? One thing that I was thinking of was like the amino acid coded for or something to try and make the whole sequence shorter.
That's what that is, actually. Those are amino acids that I'm doing there. Oh, you mean in this one?
Yeah.
Well, this is a promoter sequence, and so it doesn't actually code for amino acids.
Oh.
It's like, I think they used to call it junk DNA, but then they found out it actually does stuff.
Oh, interesting.
You okay? Thank you. That was fantastic. Can you talk about choice of instrumentation?
Oh, yeah. So one of the nice things about me, a music professor, is that I know all sorts of awesome musicians. We have one here sitting at the rear, the amazing Gloria Cheng, who you can hear tonight at the free concert, so you should all go. This particular person was Rudolf Haken, who is our electric viola professor at the University of Illinois. And actually, I have to say, writing this viola part was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I pretty much gave up in August, and I decided that it was going to be impossible to write anything to go over this. And then I finally started thinking maybe it was possible. And so I finished it, I think, last Sunday. And then I emailed Rudolph and said, hey, mind if I come over and record you? And so he was a sweetheart, and so he recorded it Monday.
Thank you.
That was, thank you, that was beautiful, very haunting. It's kind of terrible to imagine like each of those was just like behind that they were like people whose lives, you know, were really affected by those diseases. I was curious, I know like this is probably, this is a really interesting because it's similar, I think, to visualization, but it's like a sonic audialization, I guess. And I was wondering if you considered using other channels to encode more types of data. So like I know this would probably throw the musicality all away, but like for example, if the volume was related to like how many people were affected by that disease or so on, and other types of, you know, information that you could encode in these sequences.
I kind of think Aditi should answer this one. So it is called sonification, and there's like a big kind of raging debate over whether this stuff is sonification or data-driven music. And the kind of, I consider it kind of like a teeter-totter, you know? If it's really meant like a Geiger counter is a sonic device for saying how much radiation there is. It doesn't sound very good, but it's very effective, you know? And this is more like an artwork, but hopefully if you know the mapping, you can infer quite a bit about it, you know, just from listening. But I think connecting it to the human is, there's just so much data to get through that it makes it hard. And Aditi had some kind of interesting ideas on that.
Yeah, so one of the ideas is if you think about the DNA sequence, there are just 4 bases, C, G, A, T, and then if you think about the musical scale, you know, you have the letters C, G, and you can kind of transpose that as a musical note-taking system. And you can take essentially whatever DNA you want and then put it to these chords and then use it as chord progression, essentially. And that's like what I am trying to do with a community in New Mexico that is affected by a rare disease. And so a woman whose husband, who has this rare illness, she's penning the lyrics to the song, and then we kind of encompassed like a melody from that disease. And I think it really can restore agency to kind of a forgotten community. And yeah.
Oh,
thank you.
Sounds like a beautiful project. Yeah, thank you.
This is how I got the scales, if anyone's interested. It's in this paper. One of the great things about these 72 Indian ragas is that there's 4 notes on the top and 4 notes on the bottom. And so the 4 notes on the top I just turned into the DNA letters. And the 4 notes on the bottom became the chord underneath it. So that worked out pretty neatly.
Oh, thank you. That was a wonderful piece. I had a couple quick questions. One is you had the electric viola player, but was the other pieces also recorded by live musicians, or were they sampled, or?
Everything else was in the computer. The only live thing was me basically scrolling through the diseases. And this actually made it really difficult because when I wrote the viola part, I realized I had to kind of transcribe the electronics, which are here. But since I did not do it in time, I was just kind of hitting it when I thought it was a good time to go to the next one. There's no click track. There's nothing. It's like hell to try to play with the tape. And so that sucked.
Well, that actually leads in my other question is, maybe I missed it, but how did you order these things? Was there some logical ordering, or?
Yeah, so we took the study that I had showed earlier. They had already categories. They had already categories for like digestive system, chromosome system, metabolic conditions. And so we used that as a framework to kind of transpose it onto the Indian Raga system, because the Indian Sanskrit words, they kind of are a little bit more similar to these, if you can interpret it in some way. Like, for example, Netra chakra is the eye, and so we corresponded that to eye diseases. And that's kind of, and then we use that raga from the Netra system to put it for the eye condition. So that's kind of the framework we used.
So this was beautiful. I assume also part of the purpose of this is to raise awareness of these rare genetic diseases. So my question is, what are some of the important things you want people to know about rare genetic diseases? Like, are there ways that people can help? Is there things that you want policymakers to do? Like, what,
Yeah,
what's your message?
there's a lot of things that can be done for the rare community. I think one of the biggest things is, for me at least, and what I've seen, is the isolation and stigma that comes with a rare diagnosis and sort of surrounding disability. And so being available for someone with a rare condition, I think, is my biggest ask for people, because that can go a long way, even more than money sometimes. So, yeah.
Hi. So yeah, echoing what other people said, it's hauntingly beautiful. It's really a wonderful piece, and I think that is certainly kind of enough to give it a reason for existence. But I'm also kind of curious. I have not done any work in medicine, but that seems like a lot of data to keep track of in your head as a practitioner of medicine. Is there also kind of any potential application for like mnemonics for helping people kind of remember the mappings of this information?
Mnemonics. So, like, for certain diseases?
Yeah, so sort of, I guess I imagine that, if you're going around talking to people and diagnosing rare diseases and things, you're kind of keeping a lot of this information in your head or in notebooks or something. And I'm wondering if it might be kind of easier to remember or recall that with sort of, musical mnemonics to help recollect. I remember this disease sounds this way, and I see this symptom and I hear this sound in my head, and that kind of reminds me of this disease or something.
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Right now, the first thing that comes to mind is sort of the heartbeats. And so there's different like murmurs that we kind of can classically use music. And there's, I think, one paper that has like the musical notation, and then, okay, S1 and S2, which are the heartbeats, and the different murmurs that correspond to this kind of rhythm. But you bring up a brilliant point to sort of, okay, how can we use musical notation to remember the constellation of symptoms that go with each disease? That would be really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of reminding me of when they had me sing a song about the planets when I was very small to remember the planets, and just at a much more data.
Wow, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, beautiful presentation. I was wondering if you were considering adding vocals, and how would you execute that? Would you recruit someone who has experience singing, or would you use vocals of the people who may be affected by these diseases to make it more personal? And I just wondering if you were.
So one of our other collaborators, Casey McPherson, his daughter is diagnosed with a rare condition, and he's kind of used the same framework to take his daughter's genetic sequence and put music to it, and he does the vocals himself. And I don't know if we have a sample of that. No, okay. But you can kind of look up his work, and he's put his own experience as a father into the musical lyrics as another layer of expression. I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah, okay.
I'd add just a tiny bit to that, and kind of responding to you too. I think maybe one of the drawbacks with this approach is that you have a bunch of DNA going, but I see the diseases go by, and like cystic fibrosis, I sort of know what that is, but a lot of them I don't know, but they all kind of sound similar because they're just a bunch of DNA letters, And so I think that's maybe one drawback, but maybe in some ways that's good because these are all terrible, terrible things. For vocals, Casey is a rocker. He's a popular musician. I call this unpopular music, It's opposite of pop music, but we are maybe going to try to get together with there's an orchestra made up of doctors in Boston, and we're going to try to do some kind of show.
Hi, this is not a question, but rather a suggestion to the recent question about what would be a call to action, and maybe it's not of general use to the people that you're exposing your material to lately, but I think because we're here co-hosted with ICFP, it's worth saying that some of us work on science for rare genetic diseases, and like there's a workshop tomorrow on declarative medicine. I'm presenting a paper there, and I work with a team at University of Alabama Birmingham with a open case review process where every Monday morning anyone who's interested can come learn about what are diseases faced by real people that are coming into our system, and like how we try to help them. That's it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. That was incredibly interesting, and thank you for all the great questions. Let's thank the speaker. Yes.